Father, how should a traditional Roman Catholic regard the Eastern Catholic Churches post-Vatican II? Their liturgies, with some exceptions, such as the Marianites, remain traditional. However, their bishops and clergy accept the binding authority of the Council's documents. Should we assist at their liturgies in this crisis?
If you find a traditional Eastern Rite priest who's still offering the traditional Eastern Rite liturgy, and there are no other problems that are contrary to the faith, then I think, yes, you could attend the Mass there. But, some of the Eastern rites have had their changes too. The modernists focused on the Western, the Latin Rite, the Roman Rite, because they saw its power, they saw its antiquity. They figured that if they could change that, they could change virtually everything. And that's exactly what they did. But it doesn't mean they've left the Eastern rites alone. They probably saw the Eastern rites were much more susceptible to change, but they were more of a cultural thing too. You have to remember that the Orthodox breakaway back in I can't pin it down to a specific date. It's generally pinned down to 954, okay? When there was a permanent schism that entered in. There was the Photian schism before that. But there was, over a period of several centuries, a pulling away of Constantinople, almost like a bullying of Constantinople against the other patriarchal sees, because, let's face it, the Patriarch of Constantinople was essentially the court chaplain of the emperor, right? And so there was a certain political power there that wanted to assert itself, okay, and assert a certain preeminence over Jerusalem and over Antioch and over Alexandria and over Rome too. It was a process that was consummated finally at one point, but all of it had to do with cultural superiority, the cultural superiority of the Greeks as they saw it over those barbarian Westerners, right? This was a problem that could be solved very easily by the modernists. They didn't have to do to the Eastern rites what they did to the Western, the Roman, the Latin rite. Why? Because if it was a matter of cultural attachment, really all they had to do was separate one generation of, let's say, the Greeks, the Romanians, the Ruthenians, and so on from their native rites, the Coptics, the Copts, the Lebanese, just to separate them, and that generation would lose that connection as a cultural connection. And we see that happening as they spread throughout the world. Their connection with their ancestors and with the ancestral rites of their faith is loosened more and more, anglicized more and more here in America, and becomes more and more influenced by the Novus Ordo. Insofar as the Eastern rites, maintain their allegiance of successive generations by cultural ties, as those cultural ties begin to fade, so does that allegiance fade too, and the connection of one generation after another with the traditional Mass of their Eastern rites. On the other hand, exactly the opposite seems to have occurred with the Latin Rite. As the young generations have been separated from the Latin Rite, there seems to be a great resurgence among the young to want to find it again, to want to adhere to it again, to hold to it again. And this is something that has alarmed Francis, that he's trying, almost desperately to eliminate the traditional Latin Mass. And he finds that he has to use every means of persuasion and force, even ecclesiastical force, to take it away, precisely because he says that there is a resurgence of interest and desire for it among the young people, the ones who are specifically targeted to lose it and lose all connection with it, are the ones who are seeking it out now. Anyway, Tom, I do think if you find a traditional priest, and in Rome we did find some. We found some traditional Eastern Rite priests who were still offering the traditional Eastern Rite liturgies very beautifully, very simply, but very beautifully in some of the Eastern Rite churches of Rome. And to that extent, they're not really affected so much by Vatican II in practice. They're holding on to their old traditional Catholic faith in their traditional Catholic liturgy. So I would say if you have a priest like that, encourage him. Just make sure that he's got the filioque where it belongs in the credo. But anyway, I guess that's as much as can be said right now.